There we go.
Yes, that's great.
Welcome to my culminating experience. I hope you all have a great time. I just want to take a few minutes before we get going here for real to thank everyone. Janine, you've been awesome. Like, I could not have done this without you, and I'm going to really miss our weekly chats.
As am I.
I have thank yous for everyone else, but I will save them for the end in case they get here. So, all right. So we are discussing some communication points between filmmakers and ourselves this evening. Primary focus that I wanted from this project initially was basically to come up with a translation app between filmmakers and composers so that you could speak into a phone and say, I want it to sound like an avocado. And, out would pop, oh, well, they just mean, such and such. So that kind of fell through just because getting people to answer surveys is a nightmare. They'll answer them, but only the first 5 or 6 questions. And that's not very useful, especially when all of that was demographic data. So kind of changed my angle a bit here. But before we get into the bulk of it, I kind of want to review just a couple of things about the timeline of our communication with directors. Just for us as composers, it's good to go over. And for anyone that's not a media composer that might be here, this will serve as kind of an overview for you. So these are the basic steps we have. The initial contact, demos, scoring it, post-production, our post-production, which is usually pretty short. It's between when the film is ready and when it's released, and then post-mortem, and then beyond. We also have this chunk of time in which we are marketing and promoting the film ourselves. So there's also some particular things that are that need to be considered when we're in that section. So there are a couple of first things to keep in mind when you're in the initial phases of communication with a filmmaker. If you're sending cold emails, keep them very brief, but memorable. So make sure that what you're bringing to the table and why they should take time to read the last 3 sentences of your email is made completely clear in that first sentence. Once they reply, you can start asking things about their music and, what they like, what they've been listening to, things like that. Directors need to trust you 100%, just like they need to trust anyone else that's on their team. So this starts to build that trust and that rapport with them. And our work as composers becomes their work eventually, right? We kind of sign off on it and say, we're done. This is now yours. It's your baby. Have it. So again, that trust thing has to be huge. We have to remember, though, that yes, they may be directors, and yes, they are the almighty. They are also people. They have lives, families, bad days, good days, bad haircuts, all sorts of issues that everyone has. So we need to take that into consideration and not pester them too much about things that we need to know or would like to know. Because ultimately, just like it is for us, their time is their ultimate commodity. So if you get past this bit and they respond to you, you can start asking for some musical examples of what they like. You can say, all right, what don't you like? It's really more difficult to get an answer on what they don't like, I've found. But what they do like, they like fervently, which is usually pretty good. Not that it's always necessarily appropriate for the film they're doing, but you can at least start a conversation with it. If they have been listening to any music while they've been working in pre-production, or if they've been shooting to certain music, it's good to know that. If they're already in post-production and they've been editing to stuff, it's good to know that as well. So you really want to understand fully the basic factors of the film, like where does it take place, the time period, things like that. Is it reality? Is it a fantasy type film? All of these things are very important, but the most important one there is usually the hardest to get any sort of answer out of, which is the budget. So I found if you mention it and say, like, frame it as, oh, I just need a ballpark figure so I can get an idea how many live players we can have for the recording session. That does two things. It makes them go, oh yeah, recording session, we need to hire live musicians. And it makes them consider, I need to save money for that. So you can put that forward straight away. That's always better. So then if they're happy with all the things that you've said and all the things you've done, and you get to create a demo, and you start scoring or writing some stuff for them, this is where the actual musical communication really starts. Because yeah, talking about other people's music is great. But when you write stuff for the director and you draw on your own personal experiences, it really makes it very, very authentic to them. They get a sense of who you are because you've written it for them. And you kind of can gauge how they react, like what exactly it is about your music, because you know it inside and out, that they're reacting to. You want to try to avoid things that have been used a lot. Like if you have library tracks that have been out and about for a while, those have, emotional attachments already that are out in the zeitgeist. You don't want that to hinder your communication. It should just be something fresh, something new that they're looking at. So this is really where a director first says, yeah, I like that. Or, no, not so much. And my big advice is, please do not fear the rejection of a demo, because there are so many other things you can do with that demo. You can make money off of it if they say no, so that's great. Don't get too heartbroken. You don't want to, this goes back to the trust and rapport thing. If you act like a first grader that got a love letter torn up in front of them on the playground when they say no, then that's probably going to be a problem. Okay. So this is where the bulk of the communication actually happens. And it's extremely important to have a good grasp on the vocabulary that you've set up with your director, because you're not just building this mutual language, but you are building trust still. So your ability to receive criticism is absolutely key. Your business acumen needs to be on point. At this point, you should really ask them to send anything that they've been using, and really ask them to mark on a little note sheet for you, minutes and seconds, I like this kind of sound, and have them describe it to you. That way, if they say it's a trumpet and it's a clarinet, you can go, okay, they call a trumpet a clarinet. and you know that now. And if it's, some sort of highfalutin poetic description, like it's an avocado, at that point, then please let me know what that sounds like. Because that was my whole goal. So from this vocabulary that you've got and this building of relationship, we have this thing then that is this piece of art, this film that's been made, right? And it goes into post-production, and this is the highest stress time for everyone involved, not just you, because you're 5 days away from scoring session and you still don't have parts or this or that or whatever. Your director really doesn't need to know that. Even though you're stressed out, nervous, haven't been sleeping, they don't need to see it. Like, even if you're principal soloist, it's like the basis to your whole score just broke their leg skiing 3 days before, everything's fine, it's all great. It's just absolutely wonderful, right? So we want to try not to stress them out more. Being friends with them can help, But it can also be kind of a problem or problematic. You have to be careful to just empathize with them. Don't integrate their stresses into yours, because that just will serve to stress you out more, and then no one likes a grumpy composer. So in the post-production, this is a really finicky kind of time to be communicating really with anyone. You're technically still in the promotion phase, but the filmmaker is still scheduling premieres, talking to festivals, paying contractors, all sorts of things like that. Don't bug them. Just let it be for a while. This is a good time for you to just, put the film out on your own socials, on your website. Just make sure you check with the film's legal department that you're not stepping on any toes, and that nothing could be considered intellectual property infringement, things like that. You don't want to release anything too early. So in the post-mortem, even if you're present at the actual production post-mortem, you should always try to get a few minutes with the director on their own after, and just, even if it's 5-10 minutes, and say, hey, can we sit down and chat about the score for a few minutes? I've got some things I want to run by you and want to see what your overall take was. And this really kind of builds a little additional rapport with the directors, because you've already been paid. So there's really no incentive for you to do this other than you really do care about their production. And so it helps foster that relationship between the two of you. You'll likely already have that close bond anyway, just because that's kind of what happens between composers and directors. Okay, this one is a little tricky too. You can ask what they've got planned next, but just leave it at that. Don't ask so can I score your next film? Or, hey, are we working together next time? You want it to be just genuine interest in what they've got planned for the next bit. And that can leave you at the forefront of their minds. And also, if you do it wrong, it can leave you at the forefront of their minds. So be very cautious about how you handle it. And then we come to the ongoing communication phase, which is everything beyond that postmortem. You want to follow up with your filmmakers, your friends now, right? So send them cards, birthday gifts, anniversary notes, family notices, things like that. You want to show that you really care about them as a person, not just an employer, and keep them at the forefront of your mind, just like hopefully they are keeping you at the forefront of theirs. Which reminds them, how nice and pleasant you are and how wonderful it is to work with you. So now that we've kind of had this overview of relationships and the trajectory of it and what it should look like, I want to talk to you about a specific tool that I found pretty helpful in my discussion with my filmmaker this last few months. Yeah, so I already said that I initially wanted this to be kind of like an app that we could, either use together to figure out timbres and, what does a chromatic median sound like to a layperson? I don't know, it sounds like a chromatic median to me now. So I couldn't tell you what it sounded like, 20, 30 years ago. So it's a huge undertaking. The research is still gathering data. So it's something may come of it in the future. So keep posted for that. But for now,
in a world where communication between filmmakers and composers has reached its boiling point, a long-forgotten ancient practice is uncovered, and just may hold the keys to the very future of film scoring as we know it. A ritual so powerful that it saves composers time, opens avenues for discussing music with their clients, creates additional income streams, and acts as a marketing tool, while at the same time being a creatively fulfilling endeavor. This fall, experience the magic and the beauty hidden in this ancient method and summon the power of the suite.
So, the suite. This is one of those things that is kind of been forgotten about in recent years. Everyone used to write suites, right? John Williams' Jurassic Park suite. You've got the ET suite. You've got, you name it. A couple of composers are still doing it, and I think that honestly we should bring it back because it is a huge benefit to not only our income, because we can make money off that sheet music, album sales, all of that, but it helps us communicate with our directors. And so we'll get to how that actually works out in a bit, but brief history of the suite. It originated in the 1400s as a pairing of dances that then developed by the Baroque era into an actual form, then fell out of favor in the 1800s, got replaced, or 1700s, got replaced by the symphony and concertos, things like that. Eventually, it got revived as excerpts from ballet, but who wants to watch a whole bunch of dancers? That's kind of boring. So music theater took it over, and eventually shows and films did for a while. And I think we should bring it back for films for sure. Why? Well, because first of all, it's creatively fulfilling. Like, it's a completely open-ended thing that you can write that's not to picture, that you just have fun creating, right? You have some general ideas about the film that you've talked to the director about, but then you can just sit down and write. And it's fun. It's not a task anymore. It's something that you can just do whenever. So I already talked about we can increase our own income through that. It will save you a ton of time while writing and actually scoring the film, especially if they like it. You can take that suite and all of your thematic development and basically map it out across the dramatic arc of the film, and boom, fill in a couple of string cues here and there and you're done, right? This is the biggest part though. So the multi-styled foundation, you can send your filmmaker a like sampling of music. You can send them, say, some Aerosmith and some Bach and who knows what else. And you're talking about those things, and they're not your personal voice. They're not your styles. They're Bach styles and Aerosmith styles. So when you write your own suite, you've got this foundation that is what you can do, hopefully grows every time, but you then have all of these things that you can point to and say, all right, well, how about this? Does this work for the high energy stuff for you? If not, like, what do you think would make it better? Like, how can we do this? How can we make it work? Your director may even want to use the suite on part of the trailer. So, that could save you like losing out on some income there too. They may also just want to post it on Facebook. So make sure you register it with BMI or ASCAP, whoever you're with. Yeah, so as I said, marketing device, they can post it, you can post it. You can even map out sections of it and say, okay, so like I did for my director this semester, I sent her the suite and said, all right, well, this section from 0 seconds to 1 minute and 30 seconds is a spectral soundscape of, this and this and that, and like kind of described what I was thinking when I wrote it for her so that she could get that in her brain. And then she described it back to me, which was fantastically informative, shall we say. So as you go down to write a suite, you have been thinking about the film, hopefully for at least a couple of days, if not several weeks or months. You should have a collection of instruments, themes, sonic palettes, rhythms, percussive elements, even just small bits, like little scribble notes that you can draw from, that you know the director likes already, whether it's from your own demos or pieces that they've sent you or whatever. Your demos are a really good place to start for the suite if the director liked them. So keep that in mind. And as students of Berklee Online, we've all created sometimes up to 4 or 5 1 to 2 minute pieces per week. Thank you, Jessica. So even if it sounds like a daunting task writing 10 or 12 minutes of music for the suite, remember professional skills too. Remember compositional voice development. It can be done. So in a couple of weeks, you can have 4 or 5 fully fleshed out scenelets that provide you a basis of your musical idea, a little bit of development, and you can come up with some sort of punctuation that can be used transitionally to segue between those, and those work really great as stingers. So, there's tons of cool stuff that you can do. And sometimes, if you're having problems with the transitions, just reordering things is all that's necessary. You don't necessarily have to present the suite in the same order that they arrive in the film. So yeah, what does a suite actually look like? Well, it's kind of easy sometimes to throw around terms like a suite or communication or vocabulary without having any real concepts of like, what does that mean? What am I saying right now? So what I'd like to do is to help illustrate these things, kind of present you a case study that covers these. It's one that's very near and dear to my heart, still in progress. So judge lightly, please. But it's far enough along to have some prudent examples of what I've been talking about. It keeps me from babbling on for the past 24 minutes now. So my filmmaker is Miss Betty Berklee, who I don't believe is here tonight, but I know she would love to be if she could. Her film is called The Stars at Night. It's a documentary. It's set to be released early next year. We've got a preview screening set on the 12th of January. And we are planning for a live orchestra to play the global world premiere, which will be later in January, early February. This has been a pet project of Betty's. It's her first executive producer and director and writer credit all in one. This is her baby. So yeah, I feel very privileged to be working with her on it. So these are some of Betty's past credits that some of you might recognize. Not necessarily any of these earlier ones, but as we get along to some stuff that those of us of a certain age might remember, anyone that was a PBS kid, perhaps. Yeah, she was a producer on most of those, had some writing credits here and there. How did this come to be, right? Like, how do I know Betty Berklee? Well, let me tell you. Started off with a bunch of cold calls. At the beginning of Culminating 1, I sent out probably 100, 150 to universities all across Texas. Several people responded, "Oh, here, yeah, we'll pass on your information to our students," or whatever it was. I had one lead that seemed really promising. It kind of fizzled out with Sam Houston State. Like, the guy was like, "Yeah, we'll be in touch. I'll get to you by Monday," and then it just crickets from that point forward. So at some point you have to realize that not receiving a response is a response. But then I got this email from Miss Betty Berklee, and this has absolutely nothing to do with me scoring her film. It is literally, "Hi, yeah, you need to talk to Johnny. But anyway, I have a business class that I need you to come and talk to about the business side of composing, because that would be awesome." I was like, okay. I just finished Professional Skills 2, and I had so much information, like, readily still on my desktop, hadn't even been tidied away yet. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come talk to your students. So we set that up, and I went and I spoke to her class. It's about 18 students all in all. I talked for about 45 minutes, offered to score their PSAs that they were doing for her class that were like 30 seconds each. I was like, oh, that's easy. 30 by 18. Okay, maybe that's a lot, but none of them took me up on it, which I thought was a little bit odd. Out of 18 people, free score for your student film project. Oh well. So after none of them came up, Betty was like, well, you know what? Actually, though, I have a project that I'd kind of like you to maybe take a look at. And I don't know if I want to show it to you. I was like, okay. She's like, no, I'll just give it to you. I'll just, yeah. Do you want to write music for me? And I was like, but really, I was like, so Betty's film. It's a documentary about the connection between astronomy, mythology, ancient storytelling, humanity's connection to the stars and the Milky Way, our ability to see the night sky, and whether or not that's important as human beings. What do we get out of looking up and seeing tons of stars? She'd already shot most of the footage. She had a working script, rough cut of a trailer, and she said she needed the trailer done first because it was important for funding to have the trailer done. So I was like, okay, that's fine. You know, just send me whatever. But I couldn't wait. So I got home and I just opened up Cubase and was like, all right, I'm going to do some of this, I'm going to do some of that, and some of this. And then, all right. And then I went outside and looked at the stars the next night and had my iPad and I just started writing another piece. So unfortunately, I didn't include that piece that I wrote in the full suite that I sent to Betty, which you'll hear now. All right. So I had to cut that just a little bit short. We're running a little low on time, and I wanted you guys to get to the actual video part. So real briefly, talk about how our communication was enhanced by this suite. We basically, it served as a framework for us to allow her to understand how the melody and harmonies were going to change over time. She was able to give me minutes and second markers for things that she didn't like and things that she did like. Knowing the timestamp in a piece is amazingly, it's a huge, huge benefit. So in terms of the vocabulary, these are some of the things that Betty and I have come up with. FM synth bells are twinklies. So that's important to know. If anyone ever says to you mysterious ambiance, they mean harp tremolo swells with a synth pad. The heavy brassy bits, those are trombones. The cool one, that's the clarinet. And I think this one is my favorite. Sorry, but the pretty oboe is the English horn. And of course, sparkles, the mark tree. So using those, we were kind of able to figure out how to score this film. And this is a screenshot of the QDB here. I've got it color coded to the sections that it came from in the suite. So the one theme that's not in the suite, I'll play a brief section of it for you here, was the one that I wrote on the iPad. And that's I beg, please forgive me, this is directly from Notion without any production whatsoever. So I'm sorry. All right. So that's enough of it to give you kind of an idea of where I was going with it. So let's watch some pictures. So if you guys will stop your video and then click the link that will be posted in the chat. Enjoy the selections, and when you finished and return, come back and turn your cameras back on.
On the cusp of the World War II occupation of France, 3 friends and a dog stumbled across a major discovery, news that would be somewhat buried in the emerging realities of the horrors of the war. A cave with some of the oldest rock art paintings known to exist were revealed. Most scholars agree that those who painted the animals were not doing so just to show off their artistic ability. On some level, the animals and imagery shown on the cave walls symbolize a magical and hazardous world in which humans and animals weave around each other, playing a dangerous game of survival. The
Hey, Jack. That was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I've got a link on the screen now, and I think you can post it in the chat. If anyone's interested in seeing what is done so far, seeing the whole thing, there's a link to it right there. Yeah, so thank you guys for coming. I know it's late on a on a school night and all, but this was the time that we had. So, are there any questions?
I wonder if you know, in your conversations with Betty, you know, has it come back to the original, to the suite that you sent her? I mean, you mentioned that she has that whole translation of twinkles or sparkles or whatever. How active has it been kind of using that original suite and talking with her about it?
A lot, actually. The initial thing that I did for the trailer, she was like, I don't know, I don't really like this as much as I like what you did in the demo.
Oh, God.
So I was like, okay, that's fine. So, well, let's go back to the demo then, if you like that. And so I played around with it, and she was like, okay, yes, that's it. So like we figured it out from there. So yeah, it really came down to having that suite done the first initially, is what made it work for us. So.
And I guess from a composition standpoint, how much were you drawing from what you wrote for the suite? And then when you you know, you had a new cue, you know, she gave you a new cut, all of that stuff.
Yeah, copy and paste is a beautiful thing in Cubase. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I mean, there were points when I was like, you know what? I think it's already done. Like, I just, anything else that she throws at me, I'll have something that'll fit. That wasn't the case, but you know, for the most part, there's at least something that I can draw on in that suite. And there are things that I still haven't used yet. So depending on how the last few shoots go this weekend, you know, I still might have enough material to cover it. So let's hope so. But yeah, it's compositionally, it's been a really helpful thing to have.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for your great presentation. It reminds us of, you know, the fact that we are collaborating with another storyteller, and that suite, you know, I wrote to you privately, but it's just gorgeous. So I hope you let us know when the concert is. I'd love to hear it played live on the concert hall.
Absolutely. Yeah, it should be in late January, early February, but I will let you all know.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching tonight. It's been great to have you here. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Mom.